Starting out, we're in Firelink Shrine. We're going to go up here where there's a couple of elevators that'll become relevant later, but hopping down here, there's a handful of items that you can grab. Not all of them are like super useful right off the bat. The most valuable one I'd say is the Homeward Bone, which is going to come in handy if you get into a position where you're not sure if you can make it back to a bonfire. You can pop that. It'll bring you back to the bonfire you last rested at. The Morningstar and the Talisman are good for faith builds. The Morningstar is a pretty good weapon. I'm not going to use it because it only scales off of strength, if I remember right. And after this, we're going to have to hop down into the cemetery, which obviously is full of skeletons that you can't kill just yet. So you'll notice I just sprint on out of there back to Firelink Shrine, ready to tackle the Undead Parish and Undead Burg. Heading up here from Firelink, you'll see that I am not a Souls expert, but you want to just kind of kill these guys. Watch out for the one at the top who's going to be throwing firebombs. Always a problem. There's a couple of items around here, so I'll snatch those. As with like any part of this game, it's always a good idea to just kind of run forward and run back to see if there's enemies hiding in corners and things, like this axe guy. Taking out the firebomb thrower is going to make it easier to handle the knight below. This is a misplay. I did not intend to fall here, but it works out pretty alright. When in doubt, try to roll right when an attack is about to hit you. That's going to maximize your chances of avoiding damage. What's exciting here is that I got that long sword. As it stands, I'm using a short sword, which has, I want to say, CC scaling, strength, and dexterity. I think the longsword scales the same, but the weight difference isn't too much, and the damage increase is pretty nice. So what you'll see here is I'm switching to the longsword, and I'm checking those stats. Is the scaling, strength, dexterity, CC, and that's going to increase off of the base damage. So the first number for damage is the base damage, and then the plus or minus number is how much damage you're getting from the scale. Going up here, running straight down for this item. There's another item below it that I'm not going to go for now, but we'll revisit that later. This rat gets me on some poison, which is unfortunate, but fortunately poison isn't too like rapid, unlike toxic, which is going to come up later. So I pretty much just suffer through this, popping an Estus every now and then to make sure I keep up on health. And then going up through here, it's going to be killing enemies, and then we're going to explore the area a little further. There's a couple of nooks and crannies that you can explore at this point that are pretty useful. So obviously I'm playing kind of conservatively. In general, over the course of the game, I wouldn't advocate blocking very consistently, but a lot of the time it works pretty well to block a hit. When they bounce off of your shield, take that opportunity to go in for a slash. There's also the option as they're running toward you and their guard isn't up, you can often just get a hit in before they do anything else, and you can kill them before they get an attack off. Now here, this is like one of the handful of fog doors that doesn't lead to specifically a boss. I feel like these get rarer as the game continues. In this area, there's 2 or 3 fog doors that don't lead to a boss room, but after this point, I feel like most of them do. So generally speaking, when you find a fog door, you want to be ready for there to be something on the other side. Hopping down here, grabbing some souls. Those items, like Lost Soul of the Undead, whatever, you can pop them to get souls, but generally speaking, I'd say it's better to hold on to them. for situations where you need a specific amount of souls. So at some point, like we're going to get to a merchant in a bit, you can take note of how much things cost, how much it's going to cost to level up, and you can save those items so that when you get to that position where you need like 12,000 souls to level up and you only have 11,000 but you're about to go fight a boss, you can pop a couple of those items to get you to the point where you can level up or buy a new item or improve some of your equipment. They're good to hold on to. Going through this area, rubbish is something that you can trade later on. As it stands, we're going to get to the merchant in a bit, but you can't sell anything until... I'm not going to spoil the character, but there's one specific guy that will accept your items in the form of, like, selling. Going down this way, we've got another item, humanity. You don't necessarily want to just, like, use humanity constantly. Something like kindling is super useful, specifically when you know that a bonfire is going to be relevant later on, or if you're sitting around just with humanity on your person. So at some point, I'm going to accumulate some humanity, and I'm just going to pop it and use it for kindling because I don't want to run around with humanity ready to lose. Here I hit the wall because I'm like, I know there's a way up here. And there's the staircase. So there's a lot of little nooks and crannies like that that are just kind of hidden around. Another soul of Lost Undead. Most of the ones that you're going to find early on are like 100, 200 souls each. So again, it's better to just kind of accumulate those. Progressing further, we've got a bunch of guys here. I missed the little cinematic where the dragon comes down. Crossbow guys, arrow shooting, all of that. If there's a ranged enemy, like, just make sure you're able to block it. Honestly, most of the time it's a good idea to ignore other enemies. I fought them, but it wouldn't have been a bad idea to just run past them, go up here, kill him, and then be able to fight unencumbered by that. The Titanite Shard, those are one of the upgrade items. You need a certain amount for each upgrade of your equipment, both weapons and armor. As it stands, I haven't found a weapon that I'm specifically going to go for. But it's still a good idea early in the game, whatever weapon you are using, once you find the blacksmith, pop a couple of Titanite shards and upgrade it. Here, just kind of like comparing the different shields. The shield's attack value isn't something that really matters. The physical damage reduction is mostly what you want. Here I'm sticking on a bow. I'm pressing L1 to make it the weapon that I'm using exclusively, two-handed. And then L1 again aims in. I'm going to miss a few shots. I haven't played this in a minute, so my aim's pretty off. And in this situation, I wasn't sure how much health these spearmen had and whether or not my riposts were going to kill them in one shot, so I'm just like taking their health down a bit. It's also really good for pulling one enemy. If I had only shot this one spearman, I'd only have him aggroed to me. Parry timing is super awkward for some enemies. Spears are a bit easier. So most of the time with a spearman, I'm going to go for the parry. The other option is, as I did here, getting around the back of them and getting a backstab. Especially with these early enemies, they're pretty slow moving. And it's pretty easy to sneak in a backstab. Again, always checking for enemies just hidden in corners and stuff. And here is the merchant. Like I said, you can't sell anything to him, which I always find irritating. But he sells a variety of items. Repair powder is pretty useful. If you don't think you're going to get the 3,000 for the repair box, he sells a variety of weapons. Some of them are pretty good. I really considered getting the spear here because it does have at least C scaling for dexterity, and I do prefer the moveset. But generally speaking, I mean, you're going to find weapons throughout the game. You're going to have opportunities to create some weapons later on. And it's kind of better to just save your souls, use it for leveling, or buying specific items that have like a specific purpose. With the armor that he sells, it's not bad, but it's not great either. And again, the base armor is going to be fine for a good portion of the game, and you're going to find armors that are more worthwhile later on. Here, just taking down a couple of hollows. With these guys, later on, you'll see that I'm using heavy attacks to take them down in one shot, which I should have done here because it would have avoided some damage. But each weapon is going to have both heavy and light attacks. With this specific sword, the longsword, the heavy attack is a thrust, which is pretty good for dealing a good amount of damage before an enemy gets to you. As far as like the hyper armor goes, like that one first hollow that just kind of tanked my hit and hit me anyway, I don't remember what all of the enemies with hyper armor are, so in general, it's kind of a good idea to be cautious unless you know you can stagger an enemy out of an attack. But here's an area, get some throwing knives. Throwing knives are like a usable item, like where the Estus is right now. For me, that would be pressing square. So you can equip that, press down on the D-pad to cycle through the different items that you have equipped for use. And you have to aim it manually, so you kind of have to like just point your character in the direction that you want to fire the throwing knife, as opposed to like the crossbow I just picked up, the bow I was using earlier. When you have that two-handed and you press L1 again, it will aim in with the crosshairs like you saw earlier. So now obviously we're back here. Time to go forward. Fortunately, enemies only respawn on a bonfire rest or death. So since I have done neither, there's no enemies here. And we can get a little further into the Undead Burg after resting at this bonfire. Alright, so getting in, you want to step out, aggro this guy, take him out. Crossbow guy is going to be on you, so you want to take him out. And now, that guy sometimes will aggro to you, and you'll want to watch for that. If he does, it's good to stick around and kill him first. But what I usually do is run down here, roll back, and aggro those guys to bring them to this area, which is just a little bit more navigable, and you have the opportunity to start getting hits before they start hitting you. Again, this is by no means like a perfect execution of this idea, but it becomes easier to take them down from this position. Those firebombs, you just gotta sprint over the bridge. If you take it slowly or try to fight people on the bridge, that's where you're gonna risk taking those hits. I had already, in a previous run of this area, killed the guy farther down, and I believe there's an item there. But with these three, it's awesome when you have a bow or some throwing knives that you can either take a couple of them out in advance, like I'm doing here, or aggro one at a time and take them down that way. Like I said, if you can swing around and get a backstab, that's always a good idea. Going up here, unfortunately, these guys are facing me. There's usually three. Looks like one of them fell, so I might have to take him out later. And there's usually an item up here as well. It's either 5 black firebombs or just 1 firebomb. And often these guys will drop firebombs as well. Going up this tower, we've got a crossbowman. He's never really been a problem for me, just kind of skipping him. But like, why miss out on the souls? And sometimes he can drop his equipment, armor, crossbow, bolts. Here, as with other situations where there's multiple enemies, I've got the bow, so I might as well use it. I'm going to get at least one hit in to draw him up. And there's another one over there. That one's a spearman. Going to take out the swordsman first, because the spears usually move pretty slowly. That's only really true with hollow soldiers. Later on, when there are more enemies and some of them have spears, they're going to move pretty much like any other enemy. There's no real way to like differentiate by weapon type of enemy how they're necessarily going to behave throughout the game. As with all spears, got to go for the parry. And then this guy gets right up on me. You can't take damage while you're in the animation, but sometimes it will work out that you go for the parry, get the riposte, and then an enemy starts hitting you while you are in the animation. and their attack will be continuing through you completing the animation, which leads to you taking damage. You can see that I just picked up my souls. It was like 3k. The previous attempt at doing this, I died. The Black Knight is pretty challenging. If you can get the parries, it becomes a lot easier. And especially if you come in prepped with some Estus, you can just kind of run back when you miss too many parries in a row. The real benefit of this guy is, to my knowledge, the two things he's likely to drop are a Titanite Chunk, which is kind of a late game upgrade material, or his weapon or shield. And the very first playthrough of Dark Souls that I did, he dropped the Black Knight Sword, and that ended up being just the weapon I used for the rest of the game. And that kind of goes to show I went in thinking, maybe I'll do intelligence, maybe I'll do dexterity, and then I got a really good quality weapon, both strength and dexterity, and that determined my build. Of course, I get a Titanite Chunk here, so that'll be useful later on. Down here, Blue Tearstone Ring. It's the first ring that you just kind of find unless you picked a ring for one of your gifts. I picked the Old Witch's Ring because I know already that I want to do Pyromancy. Again, that's an item that's going to become relevant later on. If you took the Tiny Beings Ring, that increases your HP, which is always a solid choice. The Blue Tearstone increases defense when you're low health, so it's a good one to keep on for the early portions. Although you'll probably figure out pretty quickly that low health isn't always a state that you end up in. Often when you get to low health, you just end up already dead. In this case, I'm going to run straight past. At this point, I've got 5,000 souls. And this is the thing. You're going to lose souls, for sure. The best you can really do is try to explore areas fully. Try to hold on to those souls when you die. Try to map out in your head an efficient way to get back to those souls, to take them back. Here I'm going to the Merchant, because there are a handful of things that he's got that I'm going to want to buy with all these souls. This Spearman tries to back away, so I'm just going to keep closing that gap. Often when they get to a point where they can't really move, that's when they're going to attack. And then heading down to the Merchant, again, there's not really much point in buying weapons and armor there. Mostly because you're going to find most of those weapons. I don't think you're going to find that armor set, but you're going to find others that you're going to find interesting. And as we get to a point where that's relevant, I'll talk about the stats associated with the armor and weapons. For now, I think I started with the Hunter set, so that's what I've got on. Certain things that you pick up, like that axe, it's going to scale pretty much only off of strength, much like the Morningstar. So while it is, a pretty reliable weapon, I've done playthroughs with that, and I think the Bandit starts with it. It's not useful for this build because I'm aiming toward dexterity. In this case, I'm going to pick up the repair box. So no need for repair powder anymore. It'll let me repair my equipment for souls at bonfires. The residence key opens a specific building near where that Black Knight was. And what I'm peeping here is just different options that we've got. The real thing to keep in mind with equipment is both the damage it's going to do, what it's going to scale off of, what its required parameters are. So for this spear, it's 11 strength and 10 dexterity. It scales at a D off of strength and a C off of dexterity, which means it's a pretty solid dex weapon. As you improve weapons, they usually improve their scaling as well. And then for shields, really all that matters is the physical damage reduction and the various different types of reductions, as well as the weight. Again, if you keep your weight under 25%, right now I'm at 11.2, which is under the 25% right now. I want to say my 25% is 12.5 to 13. And the other thing I'm going to buy are arrows. Since the bow is super useful, it's going to become just more useful as time goes on. There's a lot of random enemies that you can really only cheese them if you've got a bow going on. Now, repairing things at the bonfire, you'll notice that I only repaired the things that I actually have equipped, and that's because there's no point in wasting souls on something that I'm not going to use again. I'm using the wooden shield. I'm probably not going to switch back to the leather shield, so I might as well only repair the wooden shield. For leveling, the big debate going dex is between vitality, endurance, and dexterity. I went with dexterity there. But generally speaking, I'd say in the early game, I try to divvy up those points, getting vitality, endurance, and dexterity all to about 20, dexterity hitting 20 first, just to make sure that I've got a good pool of health to go off of. Now for here, just working my way back down to the room where the residence key will unlock, and that will access a chest with gold pine resin. Some items, like resins, apply an effect to your weapon. So gold pine resin adds a lightning effect to your weapon. Later in the game, you'll get the opportunity to kind of convert your weapons into specific types of damage and damage scaling, like fire, lightning, magic. The resins are a bit better in the sense that they retain your initial base damage and scaling damage on the weapon and then tack on an effect type of damage. So with this lightning resin, it'll just add lightning damage on top of the damage that my weapon already does, instead of modifying my scaling or splitting my damage between two different base damage types. With a lightning weapon, the base damage ends up being split between physical and lightning, which has various interactions with resistances. But this is essentially the run to the first boss. So there I just put on that blue Tearstone ring that, again, increases defense while on low health, and you can see that I also have the Old Witch's ring equipped. That door down there was locked. If you have the Master Key, I believe that will unlock it, which leads to a pretty challenging enemy. He drops something really valuable, so if you're willing to take the risk, I'd say go for it. For me, because I didn't pick the Master Key, I'm going to have to wait. This is the first boss arena, and the first thing you're going to want to do is go backwards, go up this ladder. There's two hollow soldiers up here that would have been shooting you in the back while you were trying to fight the boss. So fortunately, you have the chance to go up here and take them out first. Granted, I do a pretty poor job of it, but at least they won't be on my back. And now what I do for this is kind of a cheese strat, as in it's a cheese strat, but it's a good way to just kind of get through the boss. I'm not a fan of fighting this boss, mostly because of this arena being a bridge that he can knock me off of. Plus, I've got like 1,700 souls, which is at least one level, so I didn't really want to risk that. You'll notice at this point that I'm human. I know I didn't comment on it, but every now and then, from just killing random enemies, you'll accumulate humanity. And I had accumulated 2 humanity. In order to kindle from Hollow, you need 2 humanity, 1 to make yourself human, and 1 to actually do the kindling. So I blew that on the bonfire in the Undead Burg, because we are going to come back to it. Much like the Asylum Demon, a good way to handle this guy is getting back up the ladder and going for the falling attack. And the thing is, you can actually just keep going for the falling attack. So you'll see that I'm not really doing much damage. It's about 33 on hit with the longsword, which is pretty unimpressive. So this is the cheese strat. I'm just going to keep going back up. Every now and then he will manage to hit me and take off a bit of damage, but you have a moment at the top that you can heal if you want. You don't want to stick around up there, because if I remember right, he will jump up after you. So you want to be kind of swift about it. If you've got damage that you need to heal, like I do at this point, you want to just kind of dodge an attack, heal if you get the chance, keep going, and then you want to go back up the tower and continuously do falling attacks. I think at this point he needs like 2 more falling attacks to be just outright dead. And that's a good way to just kind of get through this first boss, get some more souls, and keep things rolling. Like I said, you might take damage going up the ladder. It didn't kill me. Awesome. So I'll heal real quick and then jump on back down. And it looks like I only need to do this one more time to take him out. So with the victory comes a humanity and a homeward bone. In this situation, I'm not going to bother with the homeward bone, but in some situations, if you get a homeward bone, or we have 6 stored up, so we're at 7 now. If you think that there's going to be more enemies coming up and you just got a bunch of souls, I just got 3,000 more, and I didn't want to risk it by moving forward, I could pop a homeward bone, go back to a bonfire, use some of those souls. After a boss fight, you're definitely going to want to repair equipment. This is easily the most popular NPC, Solaire. He's got some good dialogue, and the most important thing is that he's going to give us the white soapstone sign. I think it's soapstone, which allows you to put down a summon sign for other people to summon you to their world and help them beat bosses. This is super valuable, mostly because it's an easy way to get some souls if you're in a high traffic area. There's a couple of these throughout the game where when you put your summon sign down, you're likely to get summoned. At this point in time, I don't get summoned anywhere near as often as I'd like to, mostly because of just lower player count. But it ends up being useful for situations where you need 12,000 souls to level up. You've got 4,000, which is an amount that you don't want to lose. So you slop down a summon sign, get summoned to somebody else's world, beat a boss. Maybe do that a couple of times, and it's just a little faster and more engaging than grinding through extended areas like this one. Now, with this, you want to run forward, and then when you hear the flap of wings or any kind of dragon sound, you want to get out of there. I still take some damage here, but at least I'm not dead. You get some credit for that. Looks like I got about 300 souls just from the dragon having killed some hollow soldiers. When you run forward, you want to dip in here and go down this staircase. If you go back on the bridge, the dragon will reignite the entire bridge. Now from here, this is going to be the way forward under the bridge, but you actually want to go back into that initial area, and this is kind of the thing you want to look out for in each area is shortcuts. Going down here, you can kick down this ladder, and it leads back to the bonfire that we were using for the Undead Burg, which at this point I've kindled, so it'll get me back to 10 Estus, it'll give me a chance to repair my equipment, and it'll give me a chance to level. Because I've got quite a few souls, I'm going to be able to level a handful of things. So I should be leveling Vitality, Endurance, and Dexterity. Just to get those in. I've got enough to keep going, so another one in Vitality, and another one in Dex. Most of the things that you can level are going to be totally build dependent, in my case because I'm going Dex. I know I need health, I know I need stamina, and I know I need Dexterity. If you were doing a quality build, you'd want to keep Strength and Dexterity kind of even. If you want to go with something like we're going to find a Halberd in a bit that scales good off of Dexterity but has a high Strength requirement, a good way to do that is to level up Strength just to the point that you need to use the weapon, and then mostly still level Dexterity to increase the damage that the weapon is doing. A couple of generally useless ones, if you're not going to be using spells, if you're not going to be casting anything, there's no real point in leveling Attunement, because that increases the number of spells that you can have on your person at one point in time. Resistance isn't really worth leveling for the most part. When we find some new armor sets, we're going to be basing our resistance mostly off of armor. And then obviously Faith and Intelligence are kind of specific to those builds in a way that Strength and Dexterity aren't. For a lot of weapons, they're going to scale off of both Strength and Dexterity. They're going to have a requirement in Strength and Dexterity that you'll need to meet in order to use them at all. But with Faith and Intelligence, they pretty much just determine the damage that you're going to be doing with your spells and incantations. Here, as with so many areas in the game, you want to aggro the enemies, pull them back somewhere where it's safer to fight them, especially with these rats. And I always do this with these rats because every now and then you're bound to forget that there is a third rat in there, right in the front corner, and it'll hit you in the back if you just run in and try to hit the rats that you can see from the doorway. Rats are actually pretty good for farming because they have a chance to drop humanity. Now, going up here, this ladder leads you into a tower. At the top of the tower is another Black Knight with a halberd. It's super valuable if it drops that halberd because that's just a great weapon for a dex build, but super challenging to kill that Black Knight. It's a lot less intuitive, in my opinion, than fighting the Black Knight. Which is the sword Black Knight, because he's just a lot easier to kind of read and know where the parry's going to be. The halberd has a bit more like spinning to its animation that makes it harder, for me at least, to determine where the parry's going to be. In this case, I shoot this Hollow Knight just to pull him toward me so I don't have to wait all day. You might have noticed that armored boar. In this case, how you use your black firebombs is up to you, but I think that this boar is super irritating to fight. I hate when he manages to get a hit off on me, so I pull him back to me, dodge to make sure I don't take damage from his one hit, and then from here, he's going to start walking back. So I swap to my firebombs, which I have equipped as an item, usable item, and I'm just going to start hammering him with those to get his health down. At some point, he's gonna turn back around to charge me again, so be ready for that. Nice and telegraphed. Get out of there. And then you want to just kind of keep hitting him until he's dead. I'm sure you could fight him more traditionally, but I'm not going to bother with that. And then going through this area, I don't recall there being a lot of items or any particularly valuable items. You really just want to kind of get through it. There are quite a few enemies, though, so take it slow. There's a couple of guys with crossbows on that little bridge there. There's at least one more hollow with a spear, and there's a couple with swords as well. Prioritizing parries is always a good idea, especially because it will give you that temporary invulnerability. Especially here, I think I do eat a couple of crossbow hits, but if you can get the parry going, if they had shot me during this animation, see, they just pass right through. charging up on these guys, make sure you don't get hit. Get in a little bit of damage. They're going to swap to their swords. And then once we clear these guys out, we can move forward. So now heading down here, there's going to be a handful of hollows. This guy's going to run away. He's luring you in. And this is the part where, because this is kind of a narrow area, I switched to using those heavy attacks just to take them out in one shot and avoid potentially having my weapon collide with the walls, which can really ruin your time. Going up here, killing a few more of them. It's really just these little guys in this area. Every now and then, you want to check those barrels and see if there's what appears to be a dead body in them. That usually means that there's a body holding an item in the barrel, and when you break the barrel, the body will fall out, and you'll be able to collect something off of it. Here we got a mystery key. I'm sure that's going to unlock something valuable later. Then up here, once you take out the couple of guys that are here, you want to look to the left where there's an item on the rafters. And I think you can kind of run over there, but you might fall off if you're not just aligned. So I usually walk that one, similar to how you might walk up behind someone to get a backstab. And then coming from here, there's going to be another one of those fog doors that doesn't lead to a boss. Again, I think that that's kind of on the rare side. It's more common in these early areas than it will be later on. Every now and then you'll come across one. But generally speaking, most fog doors lead to bosses. In this case, if you have a good sense of kind of your positioning relative to where we just were, you would know that you have to pop out above that bridge. Over here we've got a new enemy, a Balder Knight. I don't remember how many different variations of this enemy there are, but with this one in particular, you can get behind it for a backstab. If it's got a tiny shield like this one, it means that it can get into kind of like a parry stance. I think he might do it in a moment. Nah, he went for the heal. That was a mistake. But yep, there's the parry stance. So when he's like that, if I remember right, I'm not going to test it out because I didn't want to die here. But I think if you go for just a regular attack while he's in that stance, he'll parry you and get a riposte. So take him down. This is a pretty nice shield, but it's a little on the heavy side, which is what I'm checking here is the weight. You'll see that I also picked up a hollow soldier shield. Again, the issue there is mostly the weight. As you level up endurance, it'll increase your max equip load. There are also some rings, like the Ring of Favor and Protection and Havel's Ring, that increase your maximum equip load, which allows you to hold on to more stuff without encumbering yourself. I'm trying to stick to a fast roll, which is again that under 25% equip load. But really, a medium roll isn't the end of the world. If you find some armor that you think looks great, and a weapon that you really want to use, and a shield that has really good damage protection, and it puts you at a medium roll, that's fine, as long as you get used to that roll pattern. Again, here I went for the parry, so that the riposte animation would protect me from some hits. I still took some damage, but that's okay. Note, this guy has the larger shield. These are a little easier to parry, because when he does the attack, where he brings both the shield and the sword up, it's a little more telegraphed and easier to time the parry. From up here, what I'm going to do is going straight forward leads to an area that we're going to end up in, but I'm going to take this left, which leads back to the area we were previously with the boar, and that's what that lever is going to open, is this gate. So take this guy out with a quick backstab. I believe this is going to be basement key. Yep. lever to open that up. And there's one more item at the top of these stairs. It's going to be on the left as you're going back up the stairs. And that's going to be the halberd. And I'm going to check the stats real quick. It's 16 strength and 12 dexterity for requirements, so I can't wield it as it stands. And it's a D strength scale and a D dexterity scale. I think once you improve it a bit, that dexterity scaling goes up. The halberd is a pretty good weapon for a dex build, but it does have that strength requirement. I mess up a couple of parries here. Take a hit for trying to heal. A lot of enemies, you'll go for the heal, and they'll line up and attack, so that it just essentially undoes or even does more damage than you had taken before the heal. So be careful with that. I'm determined to get that parry. Whiffing some heavy attacks. These guys are another good one to farm once you've kind of cleared out the building that he just came out of. There's a bonfire pretty nearby, and it's pretty efficient for getting Titanite shards, because these guys have a chance to drop those. Also, their proximity to the blacksmith makes that kind of valuable. Late game, of course, that's going to be irrelevant. Eventually, you're going to be moving from Titanite shards to large Titanite shards to Titanite chunks. And at that point, there's no real need to farm for Titanite shards, and when you do find a new piece of equipment or something that you want to improve and catch up to the rest of your equipment, it'll be easier to just grind a little bit and just buy Titanite shards and large Titanite shards. Once again, I think this guy's going to get into that parry stance, so I'm not going to bother attacking him. And based on how many times I messed up the parry window, I figure let's just take him down. And now this next enemy only spawns the once, so once you kill him, he's not going to respawn. He's very large, very heavy, does a lot of damage on hit. But this is kind of just an example of how if I waited a bit and maybe just like passed through this area, came back to kill him later, I'd probably do a lot more damage. But since I'm here, I've still got 3 Estus Flasks left. I figure he's probably slow enough to just kind of swing around. So this takes a minute to kill this guy. But I believe he drops 800 souls, and he has a chance to drop certain items. I don't think he can drop his equipment, although I believe you find his equipment later in the game. So now he's dead, got another Titanite shard, 800 more souls, so I'm at 4,500. That's a good chunk. Could probably get some levels off of that. And what we're going to do here is run over along the left side and activate this elevator. And this elevator is going to bring us back to Firelink Shrine. The reason as you approach this elevator from the entrance that we just took, you want to hug the left because there is a ranged enemy in that room above you. And you don't want to take too many hits from that. So if you hug the left, he probably won't aggro to you. And same thing when we pop back through. We're not going to bother going to Firelink Shrine right now, but we've basically activated this shortcut. And we'll be coming back here later because there actually is a ledge that you might have just seen that you can hop on that accesses another area of Firelink Shrine that I don't think my character is just ready for yet. Once you get back up here, you kind of want to book it through because you don't want to aggro the Channeler. That's the ranged enemy that's kind of up and to the right of the view right now. But off to the left here is a Firekeeper Soul. Firekeeper Souls can be popped for 5 humanity, but their better use is upgrading the Estus Flask. So we'll want to go back to Firelink Shrine soon enough to talk to the Firekeeper. We'll talk, I guess. And from there, she will increase the effectiveness of the Estus Flask. So it doesn't increase the number you can carry, but the amount that they heal. And that's the best use for the Firekeeper Soul, as far as I'm concerned. Rarely do I need 5 humanity. And there are a handful of them throughout the game. I think there's 5 on each playthrough, one of which you don't want to use for improving your Estus Flask, because it has another kind of side quest use. Entering this building, you should already be hearing the clanking of a blacksmith. This bonfire is super relevant because it is where you'll want to go to the boss for Undead Parish. And it also ends up being the bonfire for a later area through that door to the right. We're not going to bother going through there right now. It's not necessarily relevant. There is an NPC there that you can talk to. But that area isn't open until you've rang both of the bells. So here I'm going to kindle it. I have, I was already human, so it only cost me 1 humanity to kindle. And I know that this is going to end up being a relevant bonfire, so I might as well. I'll repair just the things that I use and go for some levels. I bring Endurance up to 14 to match Vitality, and then stick 2 more in Dex to get a little more damage out of my weapon. I'd say usually on a Dex playthrough, my ultimate goal is to get Dexterity to like 50. I don't remember what the soft and hard caps are, but I usually aim for 50, like 30 Vitality and like 25 Endurance. But that's usually because I like to wear kind of medium armor and still have that fast roll. That's why I put a little extra in Endurance. Sometimes I go even higher on Endurance depending on what armor I feel like wearing at the time. Andre, the blacksmith, he sells some good items. One thing that you're going to want eventually is the Crest of Artorias. It's not necessarily relevant right now, but he also has those 2 boxes there, which will allow you to improve your weapons at a bonfire, but not ascend them. So you'll note that I'm putting the longsword up to +2, increases the damage by quite a bit. It'll make it a bit more viable. I haven't really found any other weapons that I want to use, so we'll be coming back here later.